All right, today we're going to look at Photoshop. We're going to look at the basics that are handy tricks to know and then to enable you to do more as a video editor or as a graphics person for video or a motion graphics artist. There are certainly things that you will want to know how to do in Photoshop, so we're going to spend a few minutes looking at some of these features. So if we go to our online media and we go into the graphics and effects section, we are going to go into set 2. Inside set 2 there is a folder we have messed with before in our previous exercises called image fixing set. There's some footage in there, but what we want is we want to open the G&E girl retouch file. This is in fact a still image. It's a JPEG. You can see it labeled there. So you will want to open this in Photoshop. When it opens, it usually is a little small. This is 100% its original size, which is a little small for my screen, so I'm going to scale it up. I'm going to do Command plus. If I keep doing it, it'll keep zooming in. I'm just going to take it to about here so that it almost fills my screen. All right, so a couple things to recognize right away. Photoshop was originally designed to retouch photographs, okay? And of course, it even predates sort of at least the modern version of digital cameras. So the idea was to take a scanner, scan in a photograph or a negative, come in and fix the things like the blemishes on people's skin or particles of dust that may have found its way onto the negative, little hairs, things like that that would be imperfections before things, were used somewhere else. It was a chance to clean it up. And of course, then it evolved into the ability to completely change the image to do whatever you want it to do. People became experts at this and being able to combine things that weren't actually happening in real life and put them into one image. All kinds of trickery sort of came along, and that's great. And there are people that can do amazing things in Photoshop. We are looking at it from the standpoint of we want to do animated text, we want to do animated things with images that may need to make a stop through here. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you have an opportunity if you take some of your stills or some of your graphic images that you're given and bring them through Photoshop and change some of the formatting that is inherent in digital files. So what do I mean by that? Now this file's already been fixed, but what I would do if somebody handed me a scan of this image, my first assumption would probably be that they scanned it with more resolution than I'm really going to need to use in a video. So what you can do is you can go to the image menu here on the top and go down to image size. Now when you do that, you will see the dimensions of the image and you will also see the resolution. Now this is set to 72. Most scanners start at about 300 in terms of the amount of dots per inch used in a scan. That is kind of the standard. It can go up from there. Sometimes it'll go down, but I'm going to tell you most scanners are not set to go to 150 or some of the lower ones. They start at the resolutions needed to reproduce a print element and a new print element. So a photograph copied and reprinted and have it look as good as the original, they have to throw a lot of resolution at it. Well, video doesn't have the capabilities to work with all that resolution. 72 DPI has essentially been the standard for how much resolution is involved in video for years and years. And so if you take your image and you down-res it, if you will, to 72, you really won't see much of a difference when you start manipulating the image in video programs. Now, if you're doing a lot of zooming in on images and stuff in your edit, then yes, it's maybe not a good idea. But for the most part, everything's going to run better if it is set to 72 DPI. So unless you need it, I wouldn't leave it set to 300. I would backpedal a little bit from that, back off of the resolution a bit to make everything run better. And you cannot change these resolutions when they're in the NLE, in the editing software, or After Effects. At least as of right now, it doesn't seem that they'll let you change it. So they're counting on you to fix those things before you start stacking stuff up in those programs. So this is already 72. That's fantastic. Now the other thing that I would want to check is I would want to actually go to the image menu and I would want to look at mode. All right, so what is mode? So there are different configurations for software that has to do with what kind of color capabilities it has and basically color palettes when it goes to reproduce an element, okay? So RGB color is the video format. A lot of print is not based on RGB, it's based on CMYK. You can see in my menu right here, CMYK. Again, if you're given stuff from a marketing department or certain cameras, you may get something in that is a CMYK image. And you're not going to want to work in CMYK because whatever you do in here, whatever colors you choose, whatever adjustments you make, when you take it into Premiere or you take it into After Effects, it's not going to look the way you expected it to look, and you'll have something else to fix down the road. So making sure that it's on RGB is the other step that you will want to be able to double check before you send it on to work with in your animation software or your editing software. Again, this image had already been adjusted, but I wanted you to see those things because these are little things that can make a difference between you looking like you know what you're doing and not looking like you know what you're doing. Now, the other thing is, if you're given still images, it is most common, especially for professional photographers, to shoot in RAW format. RAW format does a wider spectrum of sort of capturing what the light that's hitting the chip, and it makes for a bigger file. It makes for a file that can have more adjustments done to it later, which is nice. But raw files don't always play well with graphics programs and editing platforms. So you may need to convert your raw files to JPEG. So if this was a raw file, I can open it here in Photoshop. I can go to the File menu and I can say I need to export this as, and I can go in and set JPEG. I can set specific variables, sizes, things like that if I want. This is something that you not only may need to do, but you may want to automate. So yes, if you have a whole folder's worth of photographs that are all in some raw format and you want to flip them all to JPEG so you can start building a photo montage out of it, you can actually go to File, Scripts, Image Processor. And when you do that, it comes up with a little screen that says, okay, what folder do you want me to look in? What do you want me to convert them to? And what folder do you want me to put them in? So in a sense, you can just point at a folder and let your system just sit and run, and it will actually flip and convert everything for you into the format you actually want. It's super handy. It sounds complicated, but it is not. All right, so that is something I've had to do many times. You get a whole bunch of photos in, and they're in a format that you can't bring into Premiere, so you got to flip them all. The other thing to understand is that there isn't just a raw format. Every company, Canon, Nikon, they all have their own sort of flavor of raw. So of course it's more complicated than just, oh, I can deal with raw images. No, not necessarily. You may not be able to deal with them from this manufacturer or that manufacturer. So just be aware it's a slippery slope. It's a tricky thing. Don't wait till the 11th hour to get your photos in and start cutting with them. If you have to turn something around quickly, you're going to want to test them in Premiere. You're going to want to see if you need to flip them ahead of time. And the automation is fast, but it's still going to take a little while to get through a couple hundred photos that you may need to do. So just be prepared. All right. So we have this image here. This is your assignment for this week. You're going to retouch this image and make it look better. But I'm going to show you a couple of tools that you're going to want to use to make this happen. So the first thing I'm going to show you is probably the coolest trick, and that is just pure content-aware healing. We've got a bunch of stuff sort of stuck to this image. We've got some image sort of torn away even here. And I want to show you how we can basically take a chunk of space and we can tell it to analyze the stuff around this and replace it with something that feels like it was never damaged in the first place. So in the interface, we have our tools down the left-hand side, which is pretty common for programs like this. We have some additional controls on the right-hand side where we can go through and make adjustments. We can see our layers, which are all done down in the bottom right-hand section. And we have some controls across the top that basically change depending on what tool you currently have selected. All right. So I am going to use this tool, which is the rectangular marquee tool, or the letter M. I'm just going to click on it to make sure that it has been selected, and I can basically draw rectangles with this. So if I start drawing right now, there's only one layer in my design here. So I could say, well, you know what, let's maybe make a copy of that because it might be advantageous later to be able to see all the changes we made versus what it looked like when we first started. So I'm going to take that first layer, I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say duplicate layer. All right, it's going to give me a chance to name it. A copy of the background is fine with me. I'm actually just going to leave the default. But now my bottom layer is actually going to be left untouched. I'm going to turn the little eyeball off so that I don't even see it. And I'm only going to work here on this layer, and then we can always go back and look at what it used to look like. We can also restack these just by dragging them. So if I take that rectangle tool, if I get that rectangular marquee tool and I say, all right, I'm going to draw a box around this area that is so messed up. I let it go. You see a little dancing little zebra pattern around the whole thing. That means I am working only in this area. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this area intelligently. Not meaning I'm smart, but that the software is smart. So I can go to the Edit menu and go to Fill. And when I select it, a window comes up and says, all right, what are we filling with? And you have foreground color, which is the color that's in the front box here. You have background color, which as you would guess is the one that's behind the foreground color over here. You can pick a specific color. You can fill with patterns. You can fill with pure black, 50% gray, which is halfway luminant between full white and black, or white. We're going to do content aware. It literally is going to analyze what's going on around it and give you the same texture and color as what in the areas that are damaged. So I'm going to hit OK, and we're going to watch that heal. And boom, we do it, and all of a sudden most of that is gone. We've got a little bit of wrinkles and stuff here because there are wrinkles and stuff nearby that it sort of said, oh, I guess wrinkles are okay to have. So it left a few of them. So let's say I'm not thrilled with those. So I'm going to click onto nothing so that it's no longer selected. Now I'm going to bring up a different tool. Let's say I want to get rid of this wrinkle. I want to heal that part of the image. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And if you hold down, once you zoom in, if it's not really centered the way you want, you can hold down the space bar and your pointer turns into a hand. And then you can grab and move the canvas around, which is kind of nice, all right? So just know you can hit that space bar at any point and just move things around while you're working. So I'm going to go over to the little Band-Aid tool, and I'm going to, which is called the healing brush. It's also letter J. And I'm going to click on it. And what it's going to do is it's going to attempt to sort of heal the damaged parts of my image. Now, it is a brush, and I'm showing you against the white section here because I want you to see that in fact it has a shape and a size. If it's too big or too small, you can go up here to the top left-hand side and you can change the size of that circle. So if I want it to be a little smaller, I can do that. And then I can sort of click off that menu and you can see that it is now a slightly smaller circle. So when you go to draw, you say, all right, this is the part that I want to fix. When you click on it, it says, hold on, you have to option click to define a source point to be used to repair the image. What does that mean? Well, it actually gives you more control than that just content aware trick we just did. It actually wants you to select an area near where you are copying to. So in a sense, I want to echo sort of the stuff that's to the left of this wrinkle. So I'm going to hold down Option and I'm going to click into this area that's fine. Then I'm going to go to the right and I'm going to actually start cleaning up this area. And while I'm clicking and dragging, you can see where it's stealing some of its reference from. If I get too close to the white, it's going to start copying over from over there and it's not going to work the same. So I need at some point to sort of set a new reference point. So let's say I go about that far and that's pretty good. So now I'm going to option over here into this area that's fine, and then I'm going to start drawing again. All right, now I got rid of that wrinkle. Now it based it on this wrinkle up here. Maybe I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to option click where it's safe, and then I'm going to start drawing, and it's basically analyzing that area over there, and it's replicating the same sort of texture over here. All right, that is very similar to another tool that's been around a long, long time, which is the rubber stamp tool. All right, it's also called this clone stamp to be exact, and you hit the letter S to bring it up. It also says, all right, pick me an area that's safe and I will base my correction on that. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do Option, click on this safe area, go down, and basically tell it to copy whatever was happening up there. But this is a direct copy. So if it was actually text up here, then the letters would be readable down here. If I was using the healing tool, it would probably not leave the letters readable because it analyzes and generates a new texture that's similar to what you were pointed to. The blur tool is nice. If you get something that's not quite right, maybe all it needs is a little blur. So I'm going to click on the blur tool. Notice that it's pretty big. Again, I'm going to put it against the white so you can see it. That's a pretty big shape. I'm going to actually dial it back. I'm going to make it a little smaller. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. So now I could go in and I could say, well, I don't know that I need to completely intelligently replace some of this. I just need to soften it up. So I'm going to look at her cheek here and I'm just going to just blur it a little bit. All right, so that little wrinkle that was there is now a lot smoother. All right, so wrinkle. So blur can really get you in kind of a nice space and in terms of softening things out, especially skin tones. All right. The other thing that I would possibly want to do is burn or dodge. So if most of these tools, if you click and hold on them, will give you actually more control. So I just held down that for a second. And not only do we see the burn tool, but we see the dodge tool. These are old photographic terms. When you would work in a dark room, that's what they would basically call brightening or darkening a portion of the image. You would burn more in, or you would dodge the light off of something. So I just scaled down the size of the brush a little bit. And let's say that I'm worried about the darkness under her eyes. All right, so if I'm on the burn tool, then it's going to darken things, right? So this is the opposite of what I would want. See, it's darkening, so I don't want to do that. I'm going to undo it. But if I change it to dodge, then I could say, well, once again, my brush is too large. Let's shrink it down. All right, and let's go over and let's just kick just a few clicks away here just to make her look a little healthier, just a little bit. And of course, everything can be overdone. And I might do that and say, well, you can still sort of see it. What if I go to the blur tool and I just sort of blur it a little bit after I do that little dodging, right? It makes kind of a difference. So those are very handy tools to alternate in between. Now we have another problem that I want to show you how to fix, and that is, what if I want to do a specific shape? So I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. We have a weird sort of fake shot off a screen effect that's been added to this that is putting this glare over here on the right hand side, and I don't like it. So if I want to fix that, then I could basically darken some of that image and sort of correct it to not look as out of place. So what I can do is, if you remember, we selected using the rectangular marquee tool, the letter M, but the problem is it only lets me do a rectangle, right? This is not the shape that I want to do. I want to do a custom shape. So if I undo that, I can actually go to the pen tool, which we have used in Premiere, all right, and I can start to draw a shape. So I'm going to draw a shape that is outside the boundaries of even this thing. So I'm going to start somewhere up here and do my first click. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to hope that I hit it pretty close. As you can see, I didn't hit it very well, so I'm going to undo that last click, and I'm going to try a little bit over to the left. That's pretty close. All right, let's say that's close enough. So now I have a line that sort of matches where this artificial glare was. It's not perfect, but it'll do. And then I say, okay, I want all this stuff inside of here, I want it contained. All right. So once you've drawn a shape, you have to do an extra keyboard command to be able to sort of adjust just that area. And that is Command Return. If I hit Command Return, now I get that same zebra line sort of thing that we saw when we did the other selection tool, but now it's actually a shape I determined. And so I can look at that and say, all right, I want this darker. So I'm going to go up to the Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. It's going to bring up a floating little window for me, and I'm actually going to take the brightness and I'm going to turn it down. And you'll notice that I can go too far, I can find something that's pretty close, and for the most part, I've hidden some of what was going on there. All right. Now, if you've selected something and you want to deselect it, sometimes you can click into nothing and it works. In this case, it didn't. Sometimes you can click on the image and it'll let you. This time it didn't. But quite often you actually have to go to the select menu and do deselect. It's also Command D. That's the safest way to do it. And as you can see, I sort of matched, but I've still got a line here. So maybe that's where I'll use my little cheat and I'll do the good old Band-Aid again and say I want to echo sort of the texture that's right to the left of this, and I can sort of paint out the imperfections of what I did. All right, so healing, dodging, burning, these are all things you can do to enhance the image and to get it to sort of be cleaner. You can do adjustments to the brightness and darkness across a whole section. You can heal, you can draw. There's a lot you can do in here to sort of make this work, but I want you to take this photograph and do the best job you possibly can cleaning it up. And I'm going to say, let's try not to lose the fact that there's words on her sweater. Let's not lose details that are part of the story of the image. So yes, we don't know what words were up here because it's so damaged, but the assumption it probably looked kind of like this area here. So do the best job you can. We have, of course, creases going right across her eye, which is really hard to fix, but I want you to just do the best you can, get used to sort of using these tools, and then turn it into me. And if you have any other questions, let me know. Good luck.